Bronies and Tonys, Maid Slave here. Gonna be talking about how my beanie's messed up. Gonna be talking about The Final Frontier by Iron Maiden, their last album that they did in 2010. For those of you who remember my original review of this album, it definitely wasn't pleasant. It was pretty much just a rant. And I, as far as I could tell, was the only person who didn't just not like it, but it was very almost personal. So obviously a lot of people got mad at it. I just couldn't understand at the time why so many people pretty much said that they really enjoyed the album, and in my opinion they couldn't pretty much see the weaknesses in the album. I'm actually going to go over every single song on this album, which I don't believe I did the first time I reviewed it. The production was okay. However, probably my biggest complaint, if not one of the biggest complaints about this album, is the actual performance by the band, which is dreadful. The whole live thing that Iron Maiden has been going through doesn't work. The guitars on this album sound like a complete mess. It just sounds like a ton of electric and acoustics almost all the time, just stacked on each other. And for me, it ruins a lot of the chords. Just figure out what rhythm sound you guys are going to use on the album, tighten it up, and just put it on most of the album. And when you need the other guys, bring them in for their solos. And when you need the acoustic parts, when they're appropriate, bring that in. The bass and drums are good enough for me. I mean, yeah, Steve is playing a little bit sloppy these days. Nico's playing a little bit sloppy these days. His fills aren't quite as impressive. And I don't really like the sound of Nick's drums on this album, in particular the toms. They sound really flat to me. It almost sounds like he's just hitting a bunch of cardboard boxes every time he does a fill. And all these problems can pretty much be summed up with the fact that it really sounds like a lot of the performances on the album were pretty much done in one take, and they need to all be overdubbed. Bruce Dickinson has to be the one to take the cake as far as bad performances go on this album, because he cannot sing in the high registers that he's either being asked to sing in or he's choosing to sing in by himself. He just cannot sing that high anymore, and it's not a knock to him. It's just reality. And a lot of singers have gone down in range to be able to actually sing a lot more songs these days. And I still think that Bruce has a good voice. And it actually comes up a few times on this album and a few times on the most recent album, The Book of Souls. But once he starts trying to sing really high, especially during the choruses, it sounds really bad. The album opens up with Satellite 15, ... The Final Frontier, which, right off the bat, Satellite 15 is 4 minutes, 35 seconds, which is more than half of this track. Satellite 15 should have, at the very least, been its own track. And then you would have The Final Frontier, which is its own track, which, by the way, would end up being shorter than the intro. Satellite 15 is absolutely terrible. It has to be one of the worst things Iron Maiden has ever put on any of their albums, including their B-sides. It is essentially just a demo played along with what appears to be a drum machine, which does not match up with the rest of the album as far as the drum sound goes, so it sounds really just out of character and not good. You got the sloppy guitars going on all over the place. It's hard to hear the chords, in my opinion, and Bruce's vocals are absolutely terrible. He's singing way too high in the song. I really don't even know how this song made it on the album, let alone to open the album. If anything, the riffs and the chord progressions on this track sound like the beginnings of what could possibly someday be a decent Iron Maiden song somewhere along the lines. But no, they pretty much just put this demo on there, had Bruce sing some vocals in a range that he cannot sing in anymore, and boom, that opens the album. That goes into the title track, The Final Frontier, which is pretty decent. I mean, for the most part, it's just a chorus. It has some pretty okay verses in there. The vocal range is once again too high for Bruce to sing, and it is probably the weakest title track that Iron Maiden has ever done. El Dorado opens up with an extremely pointless, sloppy, just terrible segment that goes into, you guessed it, a gallop. The verses are pretty decent. The chorus is too high for Bruce to sing. It has a pretty decent midsection with the guitar solos and a little instrumental part. And right when you think the song is over, for some reason, they repeat the intro, which was already just terrible. I don't know why they feel the need to do this. Just learn how to end a song where it should be ended. You don't always have to repeat what you did in the beginning, especially if it's complete crap. The intro of Mother of Mercy is completely ruined by all of the sloppy, layered guitars. It's hard to hear anything going on in there. When Bruce first comes in, he's actually singing in a very comfortable range. In my opinion, that's where I prefer him to stay on the new albums. And it, of course, goes into another gallop on the album. The song stops dead in its tracks at the chorus. Mother of Mercy! Yeah, it's just absolutely terrible. Way too high for Bruce, and it sounds agonizing, to be honest. And it's not even catchy. Coming Home is probably the best song up to this point, in my opinion. It's still not at all great, but it's okay. I mean, it sounds very similar to Wasting Love. The guitars are a little bit less sloppy and layered. It's definitely one of the better songs on the album, but still nothing special. The Alchemist definitely shoots back to older Iron Maiden of the 1980s. It's a bit more upbeat, a little bit more straight to the point, very melodic. The verses are very, very reminiscent of old Iron Maiden songs. The vocal range is a little bit better for Bruce. The choruses aren't quite as annoying on this song. It's a pretty decent song.